So we're at the Mishnah on Kuf Yud Amud Aleph by the last narrow line, like near the bottom. The second to last Mishnah. Right? There's a Mishnah on the last up line, and then there's the Mishnah before that. So in the previous Mishnah, we had talked about we had the machlokes between Rebbe Lazar and the Tanna Kama. When if you have a partial one of these carbonis that are brought, not carbon, the non-animal carbonis that are brought in the mizbeach, if you did part of it bachutz, let's say the ketairis, if you did part of it bachutz, it was the machlokes, the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama says you chayev for even doing a portion of it. Rebbe Lazar says no, you have to do the whole thing. And we'd explain then what was the reason for their machlokes. That really everyone agrees you have to bring the entire ketairis, the entire amount, the entire pras of the ketairis. But the Chacham say, since if you bring part of the ketairis at a time, one kazayis at a time, it's a good haktara. So therefore, you're not gonna. They say you could even be chayav for anything that's more than a kazayis. This Mishnah then just keeps the same machlokes in a slightly different context. Every mincha that you bring, I shouldn't say every mincha, but a regular mincha that you bring, what you do is the kayin takes some of the silas between his fingers, he does a kmitza, and that gets on the mizbeach together with levina. Levina is certain spices, it goes together with a kaimitz, and it gets burnt on the mizbeach, and the rest of the silas is eaten by kehan. So if someone brought the kaimitz and levina shehikavis echad mehem b'chutz, he didn't bring this kain, took it outside, and just makav it outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So, but he only did one of them. He either did the kaimitz or he did the levina b'chutz. Chayiv, the Tanna Kama says chayiv, just like we said in the previous Mishnah, that you could be chayiv even with as long as it's more than a kazayis of a single ketairis. So too, you're going to be chayiv even doing a part of the kaimitz and levina combination. Beleza paidachi Yaakov is hasheni. Beleza says you putter until you do both. Echad b'fnim be'echad b'chutz. If on the other hand he brought, let's say, the kmitza b'fnim, and then he took the levina and he brought it b'chutz, then even according to Rebbe Lazar, you're going to be chayiv because all that was left to do was the levina in my example, and you did that b'chutz, so that's a full-fledged hahala b'chutz. Shnei bezicha levina sheker v'dechad mehem b'chutz chayiv. The shnei bezicha levina, which Rashi explains, is from the lechem apanim. It's brought with the lechem apanim, and it's materit. If you makar one of them b'chutz, chayiv. According to the Tanna Kama, he says you don't, like we said in the other examples, like in the previous Mishnah of the ketairis, so you did one kazayis, or in the previous example of our Mishnah, we did just the kaimitz without the levina. He says you're chayiv for doing a partial halah. But as a point, it says sheni. Echad b'fnim b'echad b'chutz chayiv. But again, if he brought one of the two bezichin inside and then he left the other bezich to bring outside, then even according to Rebbe Lazar, you'd be chayiv because you did everything that there was to do. So you did a full halah b'chutz. Boy Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Kaimitz ma'u sheyatir kenegdei b'shirayim. Ma'u sheyatir kenegdei b'shirayim. What is the din? This, if someone he designates, he says, I'm going to bring the kaimitz without the levina, which is obviously going to be relevant to what we've discussed in our Mishnah, but this is talking about a different outcome, a different issue. A person not b'chutz, b'fnim, he says, I'm bringing the kaimitz, and I intend that this kaimitz should be matir half of the shirayim, half of the silas. That means the silas, the rest of the silas, the leftover of the silas is going to be mutter the kehanim. Can he say that this half, this which I'm bringing the kaimitz, should be effective for the part that the kaimitz is going to be matir, and the levina will now bring that will be matir the other part. Let's see how Rashi says this. Moshiata connect shiraim hiktir kaimitz levadai amnat lahater chatzi shiraim ubirin lechalkoi ma'aloich, and he picked which side he wants to be able to eat. Thank you. Yeah. Now you're diagonal somehow. That was funny. You look like you're doing acrobatics.
Yeah. So what is this case?
That the kayin brought just the kaimitz inside, and he says the kaimitz together with the levina is matter all of the shirayim of the mincha. Right? You bring the silas. A mincha is, let's say, isarin, let's say, of silas. If you do the kaimitz and the levina, you bring them on the mizbech, the entire rest of the whole hin of silas, I don't know if it's hin, the hin is liquid. The entire, let's say, saw of silas is going to be mutter. There's going to be mutter l'kehanim to eat. But he only did half. He did only the kmitza. He didn't of the silas. He took that and he threw it on the mizbech. He burnt it on the mizbech, but he didn't do the levina yet. And he's saying, I want that to be half of this. I want this kmitza, this kaimitz that I burned, to be matir, the half a saw of silas of the shirayim. Do we say mishra shari? Do we say each part of the matir of the kmitza together with the levina, the kaimitz together with the levina, each one is matir half of the shirayim. So therefore, he did one half, and it was matir half. Like kalushe miklish. Or do you say no? Each one individually weakens the isser on the whole silas, but it's not matir. And Taisus explains, if it's miklish kalish, means you won't be chayiv malchus. The kohen won't be chayiv malchus for eating it, but it doesn't become mutter to eat until both the levina and the kaimitz are brought. So who is this like in our machlokes that we had in our Mishnah? Who is this? Meaning, who is this machlok? This question, is it going in Rebbe Elazar or is it going on into the Tanakam? Or like we're going to say, first we're going to say a different question. The Reb Meir, is it like the machlokes? Who is it like actually in the machlokes between Reb Meir and the Rabbanon of mefagla mechatzer mater? So this is the machlokes. When someone has a machshava of pigel while he's doing just the kmitza, you have to do both the kmitza and the levina. But if he had the machshavas pigel in just the chatzi mater, let's say in just the kaimitz, Kuntermei that says you can be mafagal b'chatzi mater, that it's considered a full-fledged. We know that you can only have a machshavas pigel on a matir, on something that's matir. And Rameir holds that mafaglam b'chatzi matir. Let's see Rashi, mafaglam b'chatzi matir. Pigel b'kaimitz oibel levina. If someone has a pigel on a kaimitz levina, shehikter kaimitz almanas lechel kazayis misharayim chutzos manai. He brought just the kaimitz without the levina to eat a kazayis on the shirayim chutzos manai. He said this is pigel. So according to him, according to Rameir, certainly it's Mishra Shari. He's going to say, if you say that it's sufficiently a matir, that it's considered to be matir for a certain part of the shirayim, so he must hold that it's Mishra Shari, that it's saying that the parallel part of the shirayim is entirely mutter al yedei the haktaras hakaimitz or the haktaras alavain. But ani aliba the rabbanon and the amri ein mefagel b'chatzi mater. According to the rabbanon that say you're not mefagel b'chatzi mater, so they hold that you're not accomplishing anything by bringing just the kaimitz. Loy mishra shari v'loy mikla kalish. Why would we say that it's a question? Is it mishra shari or mikla kalish? According to Rabbanan, as far as we know, nothing is accomplished by bringing a chatzi matir, by bringing just the kaimetz. So why would we have the question, is it Mishra Shari, does it fully pater it, or Miklish Kalish, or just partially is mater it on the whole thing, that it makes it that it's not chayiv malchus for bringing it bachotz. So we can't, we're left, it's neither Reb Meir, l'chayra, and according to Reb Meir would be entirely Mishra Shari. According to Rabbanan, these shouldn't be the two questions. It should be maybe Mishra Shari and maybe nothing. Ella aliba de Reb Eliezer. Elamai, you're going to say it's like Reb Eliezer from our Mishnah. The Reb Eliezer says you have to bring the entire, both the kaimet as well as the levina b'chutz. That can't be. Reb Eliezer k'Rabbanan sfirle the Amar Mefaglim b'chatzi mater. From the fact that Reb Eliezer says that you must bring the entire thing outside in order to be chayiv. Vaista is that he holds mefaglim b'chatzi mater. He holds that you do need that each half doesn't accomplish anything, and just like according to a mayor, it should be. Just like we said in the Rabbanon, we shouldn't have a question. It should essentially come out to the same question. How do you know it's if the stad is either Mishra Shari or Miklish Kalish? It should be Mishra Shari, or it's entirely ineffective. Ela li Rabbanon dahacha. My Mishra Shari a Kalish Miklish. It must be according to the Rabbanon by us. That our Rabbanon, if you remember from the previous Mishnah, we said they hold that doing just a kazayas of the Ketairis, even though you're supposed to bring the whole thing, doing a kazayas has sufficient effect in that we said before, the way Rashi explained it, that when you bring the first kazayas, it doesn't mean you're not going to bring the rest, and that already accomplishes something that you should be able to consider the halah b'chutz. So they would have the same question over here. Does that equivalent, the just doing the kaimetz, which is the equivalent of doing, let's say, a kazayas of the ketairis, it's a partial halah, is that going to be Mishra Shari? Is it going to be a fully effective for its proportionate amount of the shirayim? A Miklish Kalish should just weaken the entire Isser on the shirayim, that it's not going to be chayiv malchus. But he doesn't hold that it's ineffective entirely like the Rabbanan and Reb Meir hold. Take. Gemara says it's a take. Look the Mishnah. Now we're going to have our third consecutive Mishnah. We're on the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Aleph by the Mishnah. We learned last night, so we made some progress. So the previous two Mishnayos, we've dealt with the same question in different contexts, right? Two Mishnayos ago, we dealt with someone who did part of various karbanos, where he did a kazayas of it bachutz, not karbanos, I'm sorry. We started with karbanos, then we moved to non-carbon types of hakravas like a mincha and a ketairis. If you did one kazayis of it bachutz, we had the machlokes that the Rabbanan say that you are going to be chayiv for bringing even just you'll be chayiv even bringing a kazayis bachutz, and Belazar disagreed. In the previous Mishnah, we said this by a case where you have to bring a kaimetz and levina of the mincha, and he only did one of the two, that we have the same machlokes. Now we're going to have to talk about dam. Dam is another type of akrava that you do on the mizbeach. Hazarik mixes dam b'chutz. Someone is zarik, part of the dam, one of the, let's say, achatas you have to do 4 nesinas dam on the mizbeach, achatas you do shtayim shekein arba. What if you did only one of those nesinas dam on the mizbeach b'chutz? Now we have a different result. Chayiv. You say chayiv, and Rashi says, surprisingly, Rabbanan the loybo kuli mater. According to Rabbanan, they say you don't need kuli mater. And on this, even Rebbe Lazar is going to agree, as the Gemara is going to explain. Then we move to another issue. Rebbe Lazar Eimer, af hamanasach mehachag b'chag b'chutz chayiv. Elazar says, in addition to all the things we've talked about, bringing a murim b'chutz on a mizbeach, bringing the ketairis b'chutz in the mizbeach, bringing a mincha b'chutz on the mizbeach, someone who is menasach the water of Chag on Sukkot, there's a special din of Nisach Hamayim. Every day of Yom Tov of Sukkot, they poured water, 3 lugin of water on the mizbeach b'chutz. Someone who's menasach mea Chag on Sukkot, b'chutz is going to be chayiv for being mala b'chutz. Rav Nechemia Omer shiarei hadam she'krivim b'chutz chayiv. Rav Nechemia says another thing that's included in this iser is someone takes shirayim, which we know the shiarei hadam go on the side. Rav Nechemia says if you do those b'chutz, you're also going to be chayiv. This is very surprising to us because we know that the din is the leftover of the dam goes on the side. It's not ma'akev. So how could you say that bringing up b'chutz, it's not a hakrava that's ma'akev? So how could it be mechayiv you?
Where is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be on the side?
On the side, yeah. He did it on the side b'chutz. So how is that going to be a halah? The Gemara will explain on exactly what he holds. Rashi says he holds of shirayim ma'akvim, but we're going to see that it's a different svara. I'm just wondering, I wonder if it says over there the emurim yichai for bringing emurim b'chutz also, even though emurim are not ma'akev. Trying to remember, we must have addressed this at some point. Yeah.
The only thing is the same as Rashi, where it's ma'akev. That's it. At the side.
Yeah, but say, but why does it make a difference? It's ma'akev. We know emurim that you bring b'chutz, you also chayav on.
Right.
But I guess everyone will agree. Yeah, I mean, this is the Gemara later on. I guess in 2 blot is going to ask this on Reb Nechemia. Why is he saying? Why does it have to be? He's saying that she'adam shekuvim b'chutz is chayiv. We find things that even are not ma'akava. Yes, so there's going to be kasha of the Gemara later, which I just didn't get to. Amar Rava. Okay, so we'll leave this aside about the Sher Adam. We'll go back to the first thing we said in the Mishnah, that someone who zarek mixes dam is chayiv, according to everyone. A single zrika. Amar Rava, Umayda Reb Eliezer b'dam. This first din, that dam yichayiv on, even with mixes dam, and even Reb Eliezer, who argued by all the other cases previously and said you have to bring the entire nesina, the entire hakrava of the ketairis or the kaimitz together with the levina, you have to bring everything that's required to be brought. Over here, it'll be Maida by Zrikas Dam. The Tanya Belaz of Reb Shimon Aimrim, this is Lagabe, the dam, when someone was bringing the dam of the Sar Lashem on Yom Kippur, and the rule is that you have to have both the Sar Lashem and the Sar Lazazel in order for either one of them to be valid. But while he was in the middle of doing the Nesina Saddam, he did one Zrika, and then the Sar Lazazel died. So it doesn't have its matching this Sar Lashem, the one you're in the middle of doing the Avodah for, doesn't have a matching Sar Lazazel. So he says you bring another one and you continue where you were, because each Nesina's Dam is considered a separate entity on its own right. So therefore, he says the same thing would apply over here. Lagabi, the Zrikas, everyone agrees, even Rebbe Lazar agrees that each Nesina's Dam has its own thing, and therefore when you bring it bachot, you'll be chayiv on its own. You don't have to bring everything else, because that's considered a full Nesina on its own. Then we continue. The Mishnah continues. Similarly, someone who brings the Nisach Hamayim of Sukkos, the on Sukkos, b'chutz, he's going to be chayiv. Amar Rav Yechim Mishum Rabbi Menachem Yudfa, Rabbi Lazar b'shitas Rabbi Kiva Rabbayam. Rabbi Lazar is going according to the Shita Rabbi Kiva, his Rabbi. the Amar Nisach Hamayim Deraisa, that he holds the din of Nisach Hamayim is brought in the pasuk, right? You can't have a chiyuv for doing something bachutz if it's only a derabana. The din of bringing a chatas for being mala b'chutz is only if you're doing a avoida that's supposed to be brought done deraisa b'fnim. So he says Nisach Hamayim is from the pasuk. The Tanya Rabbi Kiva Omer b'nischel, the Torah when describes the Nisach Hayayin, b'sar chatas echad milvad elas ataben mechasav v'nechasa unsacheha b'shnei nisuchim hakasav and daber. It says multiple nisachim, echad Nisach Hamayim ve'echad Nisach Hayayin. This is talking about the Nisach Hayayin on Sukkot, on the 6th day of Sukkot. But it says, in addition, it says Nischah, so that tells you there's a second Nisach that you have to do, and that's the Nisach Hamayim. So that's where we know that it's a deraisa. Amalei Rishakish of Yochanan, Imala alon shloisha lugin, avkan shloisha lugin. If you say you're learning it out from there, that means essentially that you're learning out the Mei Hachag from the Nisach Hayayin. So the Nisach Hayayin needs 3 lugin. So then the Mei Hachag also should need 3 lugin. But Rabbi Elazar says Mei Hachag doesn't say that you need 3 lugin. It says if you do some of the water, which is mashma that midaraisa, you need just a minimal amount. I guess not a kazais. I don't know what the minimal amount would be. A revius maybe. And additionally, Imala Alam B'Shai Yimais Hashana, Av Kam B'Yishai Yimais Hashana. If you learn it out from Yayin, so Yayin is brought the whole year. So why don't we say there's a chiyuv the whole year round? Now,
well, we're just going to go. There's Nisach Yayin Kol Shana.
Yeah, there's Nisach Yayin with every carbon.
It should be Nisach Hamayim also.
Now they bring this is a very shvera thing to ask. No one suggesting that you're learning out Nisach Hamayim that it's going to be like the Nisach Yayin. It's not brought together with a carbon. So the Mefarshim have creative ways of explaining this kasha. I'm just explaining it according to the words, but they describe it very differently. They say it should be required that if you did, it should have the din that if you didn't do the Nisach Hamayim on Sukkot, that you should be able to bring it with the Talmud throughout the year. You should be able to make it up during the year. It's more complicated, but I think the Pasha says...
Pshat doesn't make how
because how could it be that that you have Nisach Hamayim a whole year because it's Yain? We're not saying it's the same thing. No one's...
Torah is just referencing 2 different type of...
We're saying that, this is talking about on Yom Tov, and it's saying you should have also a Nisach Hamayim on Yom Tov. And Rabbi Elazar b'chag kama. Rabbi Elazar said b'chag, not all year round. So Gemara Ishna Mitzei Had Amar Rabasi. He says no, it doesn't have to be. So this is our explanation that Rabbi Yochanan said that B'shitas Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Amra, that he says it's the Raisa the you learn out from Nischel. It doesn't have to be true. That's not necessarily why bringing Nisach Hamayim b'chutz is chayiv. Because he forgot how Amar Rabasi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Reb Nechunya, Ish Bekas, Beis Chorson, from the person from Bekas of Beis Chorson, of the valley of Beis Chorson, Eser Natias, the din of that you could clear out up to 10 saplings before Shemitah, and the din of Arava, the din of Hishanas that you do in the Beis Hamikdash on Hishana Rabbah. Nisach Hamayim, the din of Nisach Hamayim on Sukkos, halacha l'moishe mishinai. All 3 of these things are halachas l'moishe mishinai. So doesn't have to be from a pasuk. It could be it's a deraisa because it's halacha l'moishe mishinai, and that's why if you bring it b'chutz, you're going to be chayiv for halach. I mean, they're just arguing about whether it's from a pasuk or whether it's halacha l'moishe mishinai. Tana Rabban, hamanasach shloisha lugamayim b'chag b'chutz. Chayiv. Tanakama says someone who brings 3 lugin of mayim on Yom Tov b'chutz is chayiv, like Rabbi Elazar said in our Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar Omer imolon l'shem chag chayiv. If you fill them up l'shem chag, you're chayiv. What does this mean? Very mysterious. What does that mean? Imolon l'shem chag. What does it come? My beinai. What exactly are they arguing about? So we're going to have 3 explanations. Amar Nachman Yitzchak. b'yeshir b'mayim kamiflagi. They're arguing about whether there's a shear, whether you have to have exactly 3 lugin of mayim on Chag, or can it even be more? Like Rashi explains, if you hold that it has to be exactly 3 lugin of mayim, so if you're going to fill up a larger kli, let's say a 6 lug kli with 3 lugin of mayim for the nisach, it's not going to be mekadesh. As we saw this a couple of weeks ago. When you use a klisharis, it has to be the exact. These klisharis are really used to measure. The liquid and the dry we each used for measuring. We said the bowls were an exception, but generally the liquid was only for measuring liquid, and the solids were measuring solids. But they have to measure, and you can't use a larger kli than the amount that you're supposed to be measuring. So if the Rabbanan hold Menasach Shloshel Gamayim B'Chag is chayiv, because they hold any amount. It doesn't have to be B'davka 3, it could even be more. So therefore, even if you bring in a larger kli, that could be whatever the amount is in that kli, that could be the amount that you're measuring. Rabbi Elazar, Chag, he says it has to be B'davka, you have to find a 3 lug kli and use it. If you use a larger kli, you're not going to be chayiv. So that's b'yesh shir b'mayim kamifli, whether the mayim has a maximum shir. Rav Papa disagrees. He says both of them hold yesh shir l'mayim, and it has to be exactly the right amount. B'karvu nechasam b'midbar pligi. They're arguing about whether nechsachim were brought in the midbar. So this is a very long Rashi that explains a long sequence, which I'm afraid I mamish don't remember it, but it's going to be brought in the Gemara soon, where we have a long sequence of a long chain of inferences, where we're going to come out at the end the question of whether bringing nisachim bachutz, bringing the mayim, the nisach hamayim, the nisachim usually means yayin. The nisachim of mayim, bachutz is chayiv, is going to depend on whether they brought nisachim in the midbar. I guess we should see the Rashi, because it's going to be hard to understand it from the Gemara later. Anyway, the Rashi is an easier explanation. Oh no, we don't have time for that. I'm sorry, it's already late. So we're going to have to go right. We'll see how we're going to see it when the Gemara gets to it, how it changes back to that. Ravina Amar, they're arguing about whether we learn Nisach HaMayim from Nisach HaYayin. Like we said before, everyone holds that they brought Nisachim B'Midbar, and the question of Nisach, let's see the Rashi on this. The Kuliyama Kavan Chasim B'Midbar. We'll leave that on the side. That's what the Gemara is going to explain. We only have this legabe nisach hayayin, not legabe nisach hamayim. The chayvet tzibur v'loy karvu ela babam tzibur b'kli shars. Papli Tanakama savan lemeid and nisach hamayim and nisach hayayin l'chayev b'chutz. Tanakama says we do learn nisach hamayim from nisach hayayin. Even if it was not mekudesh b'kli, you're not going to be able to. You could be mechayev nisach hayayin without a kli, because it's like we're going to see a bama doesn't have a kli, but nisach hamayim will only be kachu in like kachu. Okay, we'll leave the second shot, but this second shot of Rav Papa, he's saying that it's going to come out to whether it ends off with whether nisach hamayim and nisach hayayin. You learn on nisach hamayim from nisach hayayin. Tanarabah, hamanatzach shloishu yagim b'chutz chayiv. Someone who brings 3 lugim yagim b'chutz is chayiv. Rabbi Elazar Shimon Aimer v'ushe kachem b'kli. Right. So this is similar to what we said before. This is what we had said before. My beinayu amar of Ada Barav Yitzchak. Birutze Midas Ikabenayu. The difference between them is whether he just says a new pshat. They're arguing about whether not like we said before about whether you can go above the amount of the a kli can be extra, but we're talking about where the overflow of a kli sharis, he used that part to be makadosh the mayim, and the question is whether that overflow can be treated as mukodesh. So according to the Tanakama, it is. According to Belaz, it has to be in the kli itself. Rava Breda Rabba Amar. So this is going to go back to what we said. It's going to eventually get back to that. They're arguing about whether someone who brings nesachim on a bama during the time of heter abamas, whether there was a nisach of nesachim on such bamas. Which was a machlokes of Tanai in the Tanya. Bamas yachid, a bama of a yachid, not a bamas tzibur, the big bamas that were brought. The Noiv and Givain and in Gilgal, but the individual bombs those spread out. There's no nesachim on them when a person brings a carbon, even though it normally would a carbon yachid, you bring nesachim unless you wouldn't bring nesachim. Divrei Rabbi. The Chacham say you do need nesachim. Bahani Tanoi, and these Tanoim who argue about this, Kahani Tanoi. They're arguing in this other machlekes Tanoim. The Tanya Kisavoyu, when the Pasuk says, "Daber b'nei Yisrael v'matalim Kisavoyu la'aretz Moshe v'seichem asher ani nosein lochem," when it says Kisavoyu latin nesachem b'bama gedoyla akasem medaber, that's only talking about a bama gedoyla. Ha'ta'im b'bama gedoyla yena afilu b'bama ketana. Maybe it means Kisavoyu latin nesachem. Kisavoyu, it's telling you even on a bama ketana you need nesachem. Because when the Torah says that when you come to Eretz Yisrael, you should bring the karbanos with nesachim. Maybe it's even talking about a bama ketana. Kshoim el Eretz Moshe v'seichem asher noisen lechem harei be'bama hanehages lekulchem. El Eretz Moshe v'seichem asher noisen lochem. It says lochem. It's to all of you. That's something that's for everyone. That excludes a bama ketana. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. He says it's requiring nesachim on a bama ketana. You say it's talking about a bama ketana. Maybe it's talking about it's talking about a bama that could be anywhere. A bama's tzibur can only be in a few places. But it says b'chol moshe v'seichem. He dashes for b'chol moshe v'seichem instead of lachem to tell you that it's talking about a bama ketan.
So what's the difference between Bishmal and Rabbi Kiva? Or do they agree?
What do you mean, what's the difference? That means they're arguing about how to learn the pasuk. Is the pasuk talking about that when you come into Eretz Yisrael, there's a din of sachim on a bama gedayla or on a bama ketana? And the karbanos tzibur were brought on a bama gedayla in Noiv and Givain and in Gilgal. So they're arguing about what the Torah says you should bring nesachim, is it saying on the bama gedayla or on the bama ketana? Now the bama ketana did not have a kli sharis, so this would tell you that even a bama, we know that that the din of halah b'chutz is on those things that are brought on a bama. A bama did not have any kli sharis. It was somewhere in a cabin in the woods. There was a mizbeach. They put up a mizbeach. We had the machlekes before. There was a mizbeach just on a rock, whatever the case may be. But there were no kli sharis. Kli sharis is only in the bamas tzibur or in the Beis Hamikdash. So it's coming down. It's going to, depending on what you're going to learn. We're going to see. It's still going to be dependent on one more thing. So if you're going to say that bamas tzibur, that's talking about bamas tzibur, it means you still have to have a kli sharis. You have to be mekadosh in a kli sharis in order for it to be chayiv. So when they were arguing, and then the question is going to come down to whether you need to be you need to be mekadesh it in a klishar or something. So the Gemara continues. When you're going to think about it, the reason, this is what you were asking, Lucy, that this sheet of Rabbi Yishmael, that he says that it's Bama Haneghagas Kulchem, it's talking about a Bama that's noyeg even for only on a Bama Gedayla. He's going to be Kirbu Nesacham and Midbar. According to him, it must be that they were Makar Nesacham and Midbar, which Rashi explains to mean that in order when the Torah says that you have to do Nesachim when you, I'm sorry, the Shmuel says loy kav Nesachim, because the Torah is telling you have to do Nesachim when you get to Eretz Yisrael. If you're talking about if they brought Nesachim already in the Midbar, that means they were doing it in the Mishkan. When they came into Eretz Yisrael, they then had a Mishkan that was set up in different places during the years of Kibush, and then afterwards in the years of whatever. There was different years up until the times that they built. They set up the Mishkan in I think it was in Gilgal. They had the Mishkan. So why would the Torah have to tell you that you still maintained the din of Nesachim if you're doing it the whole time in the Mishkan? You're going to continue doing it in the Mishkan. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shmuel, that says that it was coming to you that's Nesachim in the Bamas Tzibur, which was the same as the Mishkan in the Midbar, there would be no need for the Torah to tell you that. According to Rabbi Kiva, they were Makam Nesachim in the Midbar, but the Torah is coming to tell you that you even bring for Nesachim that are being brought in a Bama, and therefore the outcome of that will be that you won't need Klisharis to be Makdish the Mayim for the Hakrava for the Nisach HaMayim B'chlal. This is it's a very strange outcome, to be frank, to say that you don't need whether you ever have anything that's hukdash without a Klisharis. I think the Rishonim asked that. Okay, let's just see the last part of this Mishnah. Nechemia said the chayiv also for being ma'ala, the leftover dam that normally go on the side, you chayiv for doing that b'chutz. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Nechemia kediviyayim shirayim ma'akvin. Rabbi Nechemia is going like the Mandam who says shirayim ma'akav. Meisvei Rabbi Nechemia shir adam shekriv b'chutz chayiv. Rabbi Nechemia said shir adam shekriv b'chutz chayiv. Amalei Rabbi Kiva v'lo shir adam shiyarim mitzvaheim. Rabbi Kiva asked him, but it's not ma'akav. Amuloi. I'll prove it from Emurim, that Emurim are not ma'akiv, and yet shehin sheyari mitzvah, they're not ma'akiv. Makrim b'chutz chayiv. Amaloi. So Reb Nechami said back to him, Loi mamata be'evarim u'p'darim shein tchilas avoda. How could you ask from evarim u'p'darim that the evarim u'p'darim are their own avoda? The Torah tells you that you have to bring the evarim u'p'darim, and that's what's matir, the basar to be eaten by the owner. So they're their own avoda. So there, when you do it b'chutz, that's a full avoda that you're going to be chayiv for being ma'ala b'chutz. Taimeh b'shir adam she'ein tchilas avoda. The shir adam are just the leftovers of the dam that was its own avoda. So that even Rabbi Nechemia is answering, it's not because even though it's not ma'akev, something that's not ma'akev could also be chayev. So he's not saying that it's because it is ma'akev. He says it's chilas avoda b'misa. And if he holds that shir adam ma'akev le'emle hani nami ma'akvi, let him just answer. I don't know what kind of question is this. It's nothing to do with evarim of them. It's nothing to do with emurim. Shirayim ma'akev. Tiyuft. It's not a good kashta. So I can remember hashta amar Ravada barahava machloikas b'shirayim hapnimin avishar mechitzem deve'akol loy ma'akvi. Now that the Ravada barahava said that the machloikas of whether the shirayim are going to be chayav b'chutz is only talking about shirayim hapnimim. That's where that everyone, even Rav Nechemia, holds that shirayim hachitzainim, the regular shirayim are not makav. He's just talking about shirayim hapnimim, and that's what he says it's makav. Kikam Rav Nechemia b'shirayim hapnimim. We could say that it's talking about shirayim hapnimim. and Kitanya hi b'shirayim achitzayim. And that discussion, well, you have to see. There's a whole different. The shita has a different nusach. Where is the shita? I don't know. It's missing the shita over here. Why can't I find the shita? Oh, hey. Okay, I guess they have it like this. Ella, the devar of the Ella, you have to leave out. You leave out all this stuff in the parentheses, and he's saying, let him say to him, why did Rebbe Eliezer answer? Before we said let Rebbe Eliezer answer, I hold it's ma'akav, but now it's saying he holds that chatas chitzayim, that chatas chitzayim atakana, the shirayim of karbanos chitzayim are not ma'akav. But he says of chatois pnimim are ma'akav, the shirayim of chatas. So what does he say? I'm talking about chatois pnimim, and that's where I hold it's taka ma'akav. So, and for the Gemara, Ledvar there Rabbi Kiva Kamar, he was just answering according to you, even according to you, that you say a murim, that even the shirayim of pnimim are not ma'akev. I could still answer to be mechalik between a murim, because a murim is tchilas avoda and shirayim are not tchilas avoda. But he himself will answer that he holds that the shirayim of chatois pnimim are ma'akev. And the question is, why didn't the Gemara answer this before and say that he was answering L'Dvar of the Rebbe Kiva, even before we said we're talking about Chatois HaPnimim? Why couldn't say about the Chatois when we thought that he was arguing about whether he held Chatois Chitzayim or the Shirayim Ma'akev? Let's say he's saying L'Dvar of the Rebbe Kiva. Okay, we're going to stop over here. And Lina, we'll try to resume tonight if I can drum up some interest.